Hong Shigong said, although you are now the clan leader, you don't have to change your personality. If you want to be playful and mischievous, go ahead and be. We are all beggars, we have no restrictions and we do as we please. If this won't do and that won't do, we might as well be judges and ministers. If you do not think highly of the dog beating skill, just say it simply. Huang Rong laughed. Disciple is wondering what kind of dog could be so tenacious that it requires a specialized skill to handle it. Hong Shigong said, now that you're the head of all the beggars, you'll have to act like one. With your rich dress and your rich girl's attitude, the dog would be only too pleased to listen to you. Why would you need to hit it? But if us beggars run into such dogs, it's a different story. The old saying is a poor not armed with rods get bullied by dogs. You have never been poor, you don't know what it's like to be one. Huang Rong clapped and laughed. Master, you're wrong here. Hong Shigong was perplexed and asked, why? Huang Rong said, on the 3rd month of this year, I escaped from Peach Blossom Island to play, and I disguised myself as a beggar. Whenever there are fierce dogs bothering me, all I have to do is give them a kick and they would scramble away. Hong Shigong said, yup, if the dog is too fierce then you'd have to use a rod to hit it. Huang Rong thought, what dog could be so fierce? Then she realized and shouted, ah, yeah, bad guys are dogs too. Hong Shigong smiled and said, you're really clever. If he originally wanted to say that Go Jing did not know, but his heart turned sour and he stopped. When Huang Rong heard him stop midway, she understood what he was thinking and felt bitterness in her heart and wanted to cry out loud, but now Hong Shigong needed her help and she seemed all grown up while Hong Shigong seemed like a youth, so she controlled herself and only turned her head away. The tears, however, dropped like pearls. Hong Shigong was as sad as her, so he knew that consoling her was useless, so he talked about serious matters, saying, the 36 moves of the dog beating skill was created by our ancestors and can only be passed down from one clan leader to the next without letting anyone else know about the skill. Our clan's 3rd leader far surpassed future leaders, and so he greatly improved this skill. After hundreds of years, when our clan faces any strong opposition, our leader would personally come forward and use his skill to defeat our enemies. Huang Rong started to pay attention and then sighed softly, asking, Master, when you were fighting with Western Poison on the boat, why didn't you use it? Hong Shigong said, this skill is very important in our clan, and even if I didn't use it, he may not have won. How no he could be so despicable as to poison me after I saved his life? Huang Rong saw that he was becoming depressed, so she tried to distract him and said, Master, please teach me so that I can kill him to avenge you. Hong Shigong made a stoner-faced laugh and picked up a piece of firewood and leaned against the rock wall. He recited the formula and executed the steps, thus passing down all 36 moves to her. He knew Huang Rong was extremely intelligent but was afraid that he would not live long, so he passed everything down to her in one shot. Although the name of the dog beating skill was crude, the changes within were subtle and the techniques profound, and was one of the best martial arts skills ever created. It was thus that this skill was passed down as a precious heirloom. Although Huang Rong was very clever, she could only remember the general picture and had forgotten some of the finer details. How could she understand the skill in such a short time? After he was done, Hong Shigong took a deep breath amidst his sweat and said, I didn't teach well, but that's all I can do now. With a groan he collapsed and fainted. Huang Rong was shocked and shouted, Master! Master! She hurriedly supported him up but felt that his limbs were cold and his breathing was weak. He seemed somewhat beyond hope. Huang Rong was severely tried for the past few days but now she could not cry. She listened to his heartbeat and found it barely audible, so she quickly massaged his chest to aid his breathing. Just at this critical moment, she heard noises behind her and a hand stretched out to reach for her wrist. She was concentrating fully on saving her master and did not even notice when Ao and Kay entered the cave. Now she forgot that the person behind her was a vicious wolf and just said naturally, "Master may not make it. Think of something to save him." When Awanke heard her plead so sincerely, the tears welled up in her eyes and her face became pitiful. His heart shook. When he bent down to look at Hong Shigong, he saw that his face was white as a sheet and his eyes were rolled up. He became happier. The distance between Huang Rong and himself was less than 1 foot, and he could even feel her breathing and smell her fragrance. A few strands of hair were caressing her face and his heart thumped madly until he could not restrain himself any longer, and he grabbed her waist. Huang Rong was taken aback and struck out with force and took the chance to jump away when he evaded her. Originally Awanke was afraid of Hong Shigong, so he did not dare be disrespectful to Huang Rong. But now he saw that Hong Shigong was half dead. He did not worry anymore and laughed. "Good girl, I wouldn't bother about other girls, but for such a beauty like yourself, I'll make an exception. Come to kiss me." He then moved menacingly towards her. Huang Rong was scared out of her wits and thought, "This situation is terrible. Looks like I'll get killed here," though with indignation. She then took out her needles. Aoyang Feng smiled and used his outer gown as a weapon and even advanced another 2 steps. Huang Rong waited for him to advance another step before crouching low and dodging to the left. Aoyang Ke followed her and Huang Rong waved her hand. He waved his long sleeve and blocked the spike, and Huang Rong knew that she was like an arrow away from the bow and anxiously tried to run out. Still, Aoyang Ke was faster. Huang Rong heard the wind behind her back and knew he was attacking her back. She was wearing the soft armor, so she was not afraid of that, and furthermore she was prepared to die. But she wanted to injure him first, so she did not defend herself but returned the strike towards his chest. Aoyang Ke did not mean to injure her and his strike was only to tire her out, so he readily hit out towards her wrist, neutralizing her move. At the same time, he jumped to the entrance, effectively trapping her inside. But the entrance was narrow and he could hardly turn about, so with Huang Rong's fierce onslaught coupled with her indifference to her defense, her power seemed to have increased tremendously. Although Aoyang Ke was better than her, he did not want to injure her, so he was at a disadvantage. In a brief moment they had exchanged 50 to 60 moves and Huang Rong was in danger. Her martial arts were taught to her by her father, while Aoyang Kanzas was taught by his uncle. Huang Yaoshis and Aoyang Feng's martial arts were about the same level, but Huang Rong was only around 15 while Aoyang Ke was almost 30, so the difference in their martial arts was worth almost 20 years' worth of training. Moreover, Huang Rong was not as hardworking as Aoyang Ke, and although she learned some skills from Hong Shigong before, she hardly practiced them. Now even with Aoyang Kanzas' injury, she was still unable to gain any advantage. Suddenly Huang Rong launched herself forward and pierced her spike towards him in a backstroke. Aoyang Ke blocked it away and Huang Rong followed up closely with a fierce stab towards his right shoulder. His shoulder was dislocated and he could not exert any strength there, so he tried to use his left hand to intercept that move, but the spike made a semicircle and changed directions midway, stabbing right into his injured shoulder. Huang Rong was elated but suddenly felt her hand go numb and had to drop the spike because her wrist acupoint had been hit. Aoyang Ke was swift and agile, and saw that she was about to escape, so he hit her Xuanzhong and Zhongdu acupoints with his left hand consecutively. Huang Rong was in midair when she was struck, so she fell towards the ground. Aoyang Ke moved forward and threw his outer gown on the ground, laughing, "Ah, don't hurt yourself." Huang Rong spun the spike around and tried to jump up, but her legs were numb and only managed to get a foot off the ground before falling again. Aoyang Ke came to help her up. Huang Rong used her only non-immobilized hand and punched him. But in the confusion, her punch lacked the strength and Aoyang Ke laughed, sealing her last acupoint. This time Huang Rong was totally immobilized and she inwardly regretted, "I did not stab myself just now. Now I can't even beg for death." She was on fire inside and everything went dark and she fainted. Aoyang Ke smoothly consoled her, saying, "Don't be afraid. He stretched his hands out to hug her. Suddenly he heard a cold voice above his head, saying, "Do you wish to live or die?" Aoyanke was shocked and twisted his head around and saw Hong Shigong standing at the entrance looking at him with the side of his eye. He once heard his uncle mention the incident where Wang Chongyang jumped out of his coffin and nearly killed him, so he immediately thought, the old beggar pretended to be dead. I'm dead now. He tasted Hong Shigong's skills before and knew he did not even come close, so in his shock he knelt down and said, "I was just playing with Miss Huang. Uncle Hong, please don't be angry." Hong Shigong spat and shouted, "Scoundrel, aren't you going to free her acupoints, or do you need me to do it?" Aoyanke repeatedly agreed and hurriedly unblocked her acupoints. Hong Shigong said coldly, "Enter again and I'll show no mercy." Scram! Aoyanke darted out like a rabbit. Huang Rong awoke as though from a dream. Hong Shigong could not hold on any longer and collapsed. Huang Rong was shocked and excited and quickly held him up and found his mouth filled with blood and 3 teeth fell out. Huang Rong was very sad as she thought, even with Master's wonderful abilities, such a fall could actually break his teeth. Hong Shigong took his teeth and laughed, "Teeth are teeth. You don't want to savor the exquisite food together with me anymore. I never expected you to leave before I do." He was actually in a bad shape this time, with the snake poison in his body and with a palm strike by Aoyang Feng which almost shattered his spine, but fortunately with his high skills, he was spared from death. Still, now he was as weak as someone without martial arts. When Huang Rong's acupoints were blocked, Hong Shigong did not have the strength to unblock them for her and had to use his reputation to scare Aoyanke into doing it for him. He saw Huang Rong's grave face and said, "Don't worry. With this old beggar around, he won't dare disturb you." Huang Rong asked, "When I'm inside the cave, that creep won't show up, but what about our food?" The resourceful, she was flustered now and could not think straight. Hong Shigong asked, "You're thinking of ways to obtain food, right?" Huang Rong nodded. Hong Shigong said, "Support me to the beach to view the sun." Huang Rong complied immediately and said, "Okay. Let's go fishing." She let him rest on her shoulder and they walked slowly to the beach. The weather was good on this day and the sea seemed endless, moving gently under the sea breeze. The sun shone on her and their spirits were lifted. Aoyanke was also standing on the beach, but when he saw them coming, he retreated several zhang immediately and stopped to watch them only when they did not chase him. They both worried, "This slimy creature is really hard to shake off. He might discover our weakness sooner or later." But now they could not care too much and Hong Shigong sat on a rock while Huang Rong broke off a tree branch and used it as a fishing rod. The fish population was thriving on this island because no one molested the fish, so within a short time, she caught 3 big fishes. Huang Rong used the same method of cooking chicken to cook the fish, allowing them to eat their fill. After resting for a while, Hong Shigong instructed Huang Rong to display the moves of the dog-beating skill and gave some pointers along the way. Huang Rong understood more of the finer profound changes of the skill. When evening came, she had practiced till she was very hot and removed her outer coat and jumped into the sea to bathe. Suddenly she had a thought, "I heard that the dragon palace at the bottom of the sea has a very beautiful dragon princess. I wonder if Brother Jing had gone to the dragon palace?" She dreamily kicked in the water but felt a sharp pain in her foot and quickly retracted it but felt as though it was being grabbed by something and it could not go free. She played in the sea since young and was not even afraid of large oysters and was about to stretch out her hand to catch it but got a shock instead. The oyster was almost as big as a table. It was larger than any oyster she had seen at Peach Blossom Island. She stretched out both hands to pry it open. The oyster was incredibly strong and even with both hands, she could not force it open. The oyster gripped her even tighter and her leg got even more painful. Huang Rong smacked through the water, hoping to grab it out of the water, but she had not expected it to feel like it weighed around 200 to 300 jin. The oyster had been on the seabed for many years and had already become part of the reef. How would it be easy to move it? The Wangrong struggled a while more but felt her foot become even more painful, so she was worried and gulped down 2 mouthfuls of water and thought, although I have no wish to live, but if I leave Master alone here to be bullied by that scoundrel, I won't die in peace. She quickly grabbed a large stone and smashed it on the oyster, but because its shell was tough and she could not exert much strength in the water, she had to hit it repeatedly but it did not budge. As the oyster was attacked it tightened its grip further and Wangrong swallowed the water again, but she suddenly thought of something and quickly put the stone down and grabbed a handful of sand and threw it into the oyster. The oyster was indeed allergic to sand and hurriedly opened up, wanting to expel the sand. As soon as her leg was free, she wasted no time in swimming to the surface and heaved in the fresh air. Hong Shigong noticed that she was submerged for such a long time and became worried as he knew she must have met some trouble in the water and wanted to help her. He anxiously splashed around in the water for a brief moment before he saw Wangrong surface and hailed her in his excitement. Wangrong waved to her master and wanted to dive again. This time she was prepared and dived some distance away from the giant oyster and shook it, then used the reef as a pivot to lift it up. She dragged the oyster back to the shore. When the oyster left the water surface, it lost its buoyancy and became as heavy as a large rock, and Wangrong could not move it further. She then grabbed a large stone and struck the oyster to vent her anger. When she saw the deep wound the oyster had inflicted on her, she thought of her close brush with death and stopped hitting it. On this night the two of them made the oyster into a good meal and they felt that it tasted really good. The next day when Hong Shigong awoke, he felt that the great pain in his body was less intense. His stomach felt really comfortable and he uncontrollably sighed. Hong Shigong said, "After sleeping for a night, my injuries seem to have decreased by quite a bit." Wangrong was elated and exclaimed, "It must be the oyster meat which helped you." Hong Shigong laughed. The oyster meat didn't help much, but because the food was delicious, it satisfied my mouth. After that my recovery follows automatically by a slight bit. The Wangrong giggled and rushed out to the beach to find the remains of the oyster meat. In her eagerness, she forgot about Aoyanke. Just as she cut off 2 slices of the meat, she suddenly saw a figure which was moving closer to her. The Wangrong bent her waist and grabbed part of the oyster's shell and threw it out and jumped away at the same time, reaching the waterline. After observing Hong Shigong from a distance for a day, Aoyanke felt that he was becoming more suspicious as he could hardly walk, but Aoyanke did not dare go into the cave, so now he forced himself forward and said, "Sister, don't go, I want to talk to you." The Wangrong said, "I'm ignoring you, yet you disregard that, you're really shameless." She then made a face at him. Aoyanke saw her girlish attitude, causing his face to be devoid of color and his heart to be itchy, so he advanced 2 steps and laughed. "It's your fault. It's because you're so beautiful that you can't get people to ignore you." The Wangrong laughed. "I said I'm ignoring you and I mean it. It's useless to sweet-talk me." Aoyanke advanced yet another step and said, "I don't believe you." The Wangrong's face became a shade darker and said, "Move another step forward and I'll ask Master to club you." Aoyanke said, "Forget it, can he even walk? I'll go in and carry him out, okay?" The Wangrong got a shock inside and retreated 2 steps. Aoyanke grinned, "If you like to jump into the sea then go ahead. I'll wait here for you. Let's see who can last longer." The Wangrong said, "Fine, you're bullying me, I'll ignore you forever." She turned and ran, but tripped on a stone and fell down. Aoyanke sort of expected this so he laughed, "You're really mischievous and naughty, but I love it." He held his gown in his hand to catch any secret needles she might throw and walk towards her. The Wangrong shouted, "Don't come over." She struggled up but fell again after 3 steps. This time her fall was more serious and half her body was in the sea and she seemed to have fainted. Aoyanke thought, "This girl is very crafty, I won't fall for her trick." With your skills, how did you fall without any apparent reason? He stood there and observed her. After some time, he saw that she was still motionless and the tide was about to engulf her whole body. Aoyanke became worried and thought, this time she has really fainted. If I don't save her she might drown. He ran forward and tried to pull her legs. When he tugged her legs, he got a shock as he felt that her body was stiff, so he quickly hugged her up, but Huangrong hugged his legs instead and called out, "Go down." Aoyanke could not stand properly and the two of them went into the water together. In the water, despite his high skills, he could not use them and thought, even with such precautions, I fell for her trick. This time my life is lost. Huangrong originally wanted to dunk his head in the water to appease her anger. However, as Aoyanke felt the water fill his mouth, he could not feel where his body was and struggled wildly, wanting to grab onto Huangrong. However, she had already expected that and swam around him, so how could he catch her? In the struggle, Aoyanke drank a few mouthfuls of water and his body sank deeper with his feet touching the seabed. Though his martial arts were good and he was quick thinking, he was at a great disadvantage in the water and he felt his body float aimlessly in the water. He hurriedly grabbed a rock on the seabed and used his internal energy to hold his breath and looked around to find the direction to the shore. But the water was murky and he could not tell east from west. He walked around for a few steps and felt that walking upwards was a good idea, so he hit the rock and took large steps towards the shallower region. With the reef on the seabed, his movement was very difficult, but he used his internal energy to dash across in one go. Huangrong saw that he did not surface for some time, so she quickly looked around and saw him walking in the water and was surprised. She swam behind him and used her spike to pierce towards him. Aoyanke felt the water flowing faster, so he quickly evaded and moved even faster. Now he felt the lack of air in his lungs and let go of the large stone he was carrying and tried to surface to breathe, and when he stuck his head out, he saw that he was already close to the shore. Huangrong knew she could not stop him now, so she sighed and dived again. Aoyanke did not die and crawled onto the beach completely drenched and his senses were a blur. He threw up all the water he drank and felt his body go weak as if he suffered from some great illness. He was very angry and thought, I'll go kill that old beggar and see if that girl listens to me. Although he had such thoughts, he was still wary of Hong Shigong and breathed for a few moments to get rid of his fatigue, so he broke off a tree branch and used it as a makeshift weapon, then ran towards the cave. He avoided going in directly and tried to slip in at the side. He listened for a moment and did not pick up any movements in the room, so he looked in and saw Hong Shigong sitting down on the ground, meditating. His face showed no signs of any injury. Aoyanke thought, I'll test him to see if he can move. He said in a loud voice, Uncle Hong, this is bad, this is bad. Hong Shigong opened his eyes and asked, what? Aoyanke pretended to be in a state of panic and said, Sister Huang tried to catch a rabbit but fell into a deep valley and is injured. She can't climb out now. Hong Shigong was shocked and said, quickly save her. Aoyanke was excited and thought, if he could walk, why doesn't he come out and save her? He walked in and laughed, she tried ways and means to take my life, why should I help her? You go save her. Hong Shigong observed his expression and knew that he was faking it, and thought, this scum has discovered that it lost my martial arts, I'm in danger. In this situation, he could only try to bring him down as well, and secretly channeled all his strength to his arm, and waited for him to come before he would strike. However, when he did that, he felt a sharp pain near his heart and his body felt like it was about to collapse apart, but when he saw Aoyanke's perverted smile, he gave a long sigh and waited for death. Huangrong saw Aoyanke hit the shore and got worried, thinking, at this point the scoundrel would be prepared against me. It would be harder to scheme against him now. She swam outwards and headed left. After a while she saw the lush foliage and felt that this beach was different. She then thought of Peach Blossom Island and became sad, but then she thought, If I can find a safe place here for us to hide for a while, that scoundrel might not find us. It was not a fantastic plan, but it was better than their situation now, and he might not actually find them, giving her master time to recover. Thus she went ashore, but she did not dare explore too deep as she was afraid of bumping into Aoyang, so she stuck close to the sea, thinking, if I wasn't too playful in the past and mastered father's 5 element skills, then I'd be able to handle that scoundrel. Hey, no, father gave him the map to Peach Blossom Island and he would surely be able to understand it. She was so absorbed in her thinking when she tripped on a tree vine and stumbled, and above her was some rustling noise followed by the mud and small pebbles raining on her. She dashed aside but hit a tree behind, so a few of the pebbles hit her head. Fortunately she was wearing the soft armor, so she was not really hurt. She looked up and was shocked. Her heart banged rapidly. She saw a sheer cliff face with a gigantic rock at the edge of the cliff. Half the rock was sticking out and any slight disturbance could bring the rock crashing down. The top of the cliff had many thick vines winding about, and the very vine she tripped on just now was connected up to the rock. If she snapped a vine connected directly to the 1,000-pound rock, this rock would have smacked right into her, turning her into mincemeat. The rock vibrated but was not dislodged. Huang Rong became extremely careful and watched where she was going, jumping now and stopping then. She moved back several dozen meters and became curious. She knew that if she could pull the rock down with just an arm, but no one ever came here. There was not even a bird in sight, and the rock had been here for hundreds of years. The cliffs surrounded this place, and even the sea breeze could not get through, and it seemed like this rock had already vibrated in the wind for the hundreds of years. Huang Rong went back to find her master, but along the way she suddenly had this idea. Heaven wants this scoundrel dead and has presented such a wonderful opportunity. How could I be so dense? She became excited and somersaulted twice. She hurriedly returned to the cliff and carefully examined the place and saw that the trees reached up to the sky, and if one wanted to avoid it, one could only jump 4 to 5 feet away at most, so if that rock came crashing down, even birds and squirrels might not evade it. She took her spike out and cautiously walked to the base of the cliff and noted the 7 or 8 vines directly connected to the rock so that she would not touch them. Then she cut off the remaining vines. When she cut a vine she held her breath as she was afraid that one small mistake and it would be her who would be flattened. When she finished, she was drenched in sweat and felt that it was more tiring than a fierce battle. She then connected the cut vines together and placed a few heaps of dry grass as markings, then memorized the route she took before going back, and she hummed a few tunes along the way, feeling proud of herself. When she got near the cave she still did not see Aoyang's shadow and suddenly heard a perverted laugh coming from inside, followed by someone saying, "You claim to be among the best martial artists, yet today you are in grandfather's power. How do you feel?" "Okay. On account that you're an elder, I'll let you have a 3-move advantage. How's that? You can display each and every one of the 18 dragon subduing palms." Huang Rong softly exclaimed, "Ah!" She saw that the situation was threatening and shouted, "Father, you're here? Ah, Uncle Aoyang, you're here too." Aoyang had already assessed Hong Shigong's abilities and was about to strike when he heard Huang Rong shout. So he was happy and thought, how is it Uncle and old heretic Huang are here? Then he thought, it must be that girl shouting rubbish to save that old beggar. Fine, since that old beggar is under my control anyway, I might as well go take a look. He then exited the cave. He saw Huang Rong waving towards the beach and shouting, "Father! Father!" Aoyang looked out, but of course he did not see Huang Yaoshi. He laughed, "Sister, you want to trick me out to play, how could I refuse?" Huang Rong laughed and said, "Who's lying?" She then ran to the beach. Aoyang laughed, this time unprepared, "You want to drag me into the sea again? Let's try it." He then chased her. His qigong was good and he was catching up fast. Huang Rong inwardly exclaimed, "This is bad. I might get caught even before reaching that cave." She ran another few dozen meters, and Awang was almost reaching her. Huang Rong broke left and left the beach. Awang had learned his lesson and did not dare go near, so he laughed. Okay, let's play hide and seek. Though he did not stop, he was prepared for any trick she might play. Huang Rong stopped and laughed. There's a large worm in front. If you chase again, I'll eat you in one gulp. Awang laughed. I'm a worm too, and I'm going to eat you. He pounced forward, but Huang Rong just laughed and ran ahead. The two came close to the cliff wall soon enough. Huang Rong ran even faster and shouted, "Come on!" Just as she was about to reach the wall, she saw two figures on the beach. At this time she was really curious, but did not have the luxury to stop, so she looked at the piles of grass carefully, then ran all the way to the cliff's base. Awang laughed. Where's the worm? He also ran faster and reached the cliff wall like an arrow. The spot where Huang Rong landed was already cleared of vines, but Awang naturally did not suspect any trap and stepped right into it, wrenching the rock out of its place. The vines snapped and Awang felt a great pressure descending on him. He looked up and it scared the living daylights out of him and saw a mountain of a rock smashing down towards him. Although the rock was very high up, the gust of wind was so strong that he could hardly breathe, so he hastily jumped backwards, but he smacked right into a tree with such a great force that the tree cracked and the splinters pierced him. At this point he only fled for his life and ignored the pain, so he jumped away, but only managed to jump 3 feet. Now he was shocked into a daze, but suddenly felt as though someone jolted him awake, dragging him several feet away. But it was too late, and with a thunderous rumble the dust flew everywhere and then he fainted. Huang Rong saw that her plan worked, so she was really happy and did not expect the deafening rumble which seemed to shove her aside. Her head was hit by the countless grains of dirt and dust. She bent over and held her head for a moment before opening her eyes, and she saw 2 shadows through the dust. When the dust settled, she rubbed her eyes and saw that it was actually West Poison Awang, and the other was none other than the one she so deeply missed, Go Jing. Huang Rong exclaimed and jumped for joy. Go Jing had also never expected to meet her here, so he rushed forward and hugged her. In their excitement, they had forgotten that their enemy was just close by. The other day when Go Jing and Awang were fighting on the junk, they both could not gain any advantage, and at the same time the junk was sinking, so it took them down. In the deep sea the water pressure was very high, and they felt the water forcing its way into their ears and noses, causing great pain, so they had to stop their struggle and cover their ears and noses. The bottom of the sea had a swift undercurrent moving in a different direction from the surface current, so before they knew it they were swept some distance away. When Go Jing managed to get up to the surface to breathe, it was already dark and the boat seemed very far away. Go Jing shouted. And at that very moment Huang Rong was looking for him, but they were so far away, how could they meet? Go Jing shouted again but felt a tug on his leg, followed by another head hitting the surface. It was Awang. He was also at a disadvantage in the water, so although he was a martial arts master, he struggled wildly in the water and then refused to release Go Jing's leg. Go Jing struggled harder but his other leg was grabbed too. They wrestled for a brief moment before submerging again. When they hit the surface, Go Jing shouted, "Let my legs go, I won't desert you." Awang also knew that this would kill them both, so he released the legs and grabbed his shoulder. Go Jing also supported him, allowing them to float. At this time, they saw a large wooden board float by and hit Go Jing. Awang shouted, "Careful." Go Jing grabbed it, shouting, "Catch it, don't let go." They looked around but did not see any boats. Awang's snake's staff was lost and he worried, "If we meet any sharks, we can only hit them wildly like Zuba Tong. At that time I saved him, but Hole saved me now?" They floated for some time and saw many fishes swimming by, so they had to depend on the fishes for survival. As the ancient saying goes, helping each other on the same boat, these two men who fought a bitter battle just a while ago could share the same raft. For several days they fortunately did not meet any danger. This time the current brought them to the island where Hong Shigong and Huang Rong was, and only 2 days after they arrived,